There are mysteries that time erases, cases that fade into yellowed police files, forgotten by everyone but the families they left behind. And then there are the rare few that do the opposite. Instead of fading, they grow darker, stranger, more unsettling with each passing year. This is one of those cases. The evidence doesn't line up. The testimonies contradict each other. And even the investigators who worked it, seasoned professionals hardened by decades of unsolved crimes, still confess that this one keeps them up at night. It's not just the brutality of what happened. It's the impossibility of it. How does a case stay open for so long, resisting every attempt at resolution? Why do the answers seem to slip through our fingers the moment we think we've found them? And most importantly, what truth still lurks in the shadows, terrifying even those who've sworn to seek justice? Chapter 1. The night it began. It started like any other quiet evening in this unassuming town. The kind of night where most people lock their doors, turn off the porch light, and settle into the comfort of routine. But for one family and eventually an entire community, that night would split life into two parts, before and after. The call came into the local police department just after midnight. A neighbor had reported something strange, a noise that didn't sound like anything ordinary. Not a car backfiring, not fireworks. It was sharper, sudden, and followed by silence, so heavy it made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. When officers arrived, nothing looked unusual at first glance. The street was calm, the houses dark, and the night air carried the faint hum of crickets. But within minutes, their flashlights swept across a scene that would etch itself permanently into their memories. The details of what they found inside have been deliberately withheld from the public in full, even decades later. What has been confirmed, however, is this: something had happened here that defied simple explanation. It wasn't just violent, it was strange. Too strange. And as dawn broke, whispers began to spread. A crime had taken place, yes. But it was what kind of crime that would haunt investigators for years to come. Chapter 2. A Town in Shock. By sunrise, the story was no longer confined to the street where it began. News traveled fast in a small town, and before long, everyone had heard some version of the tale. The problem was no two versions sounded the same. Some said it was a break-in gone wrong. Others whispered about a ritual, something sinister, something otherworldly. Neighbors peeked through curtains, reporters showed up with cameras, and the police scrambled to manage the growing crowd. For every official statement made, 10 new rumors emerged. And in that chaos, one unsettling truth began to surface. No one felt safe anymore. This wasn't just another crime scene, it was the kind of case that left people questioning reality itself. Parents walked their children to school in silence. Clerks at the grocery store exchanged uneasy glances. Even the local church, usually a refuge from fear, buzzed with speculation and whispered prayers. The investigators tried to keep control of the narrative, but in doing so, they only fueled curiosity. What could they possibly have found that was too disturbing to share? The mystery began to take on a life of its own, and the town itself became a character in the unfolding drama. Every alley, every shadow, every stranger was suddenly suspect. And for the officers leading the case, the pressure was unbearable. Because deep down they knew this wasn't going to be solved easily. Chapter 3. The First Clues. When detectives finally combed through the scene, they uncovered details that didn't add up. At first glance, it looked like chaos. Furniture overturned, personal items scattered, broken glass crunching underfoot. But the longer they looked, the more it seemed staged. There were marks on the walls that didn't match the supposed struggle. Footprints led toward the back door, but then vanished in the muddy yard as if whoever left them had simply disappeared. And then came the most chilling discovery: a series of strange symbols drawn faintly in chalk near the entryway, symbols no one could immediately identify. Was it a prank? A message? Or something darker? Forensic teams took photos, bag samples, and sent them off for analysis, but the results would take days. In the meantime, whispers began to spread. The chalk markings weren't random. Some residents insisted they looked like runes, ancient symbols tied to rituals. Others thought they were nothing more than children's scribbles. But the investigators weren't so sure. Then, just when they thought they had their first real lead, another unsettling clue surfaced. The neighbors claimed they'd heard voices the night before. Not shouting, not arguing, chanting. It was enough to change the tone of the entire investigation. This wasn't just about solving a crime anymore. It was about deciphering a puzzle that seemed to grow more terrifying with every piece uncovered. Chapter 4: A Haunting Discovery. The first few days of any investigation are crucial. Leads fade, memories blur, and evidence can vanish in the blink of an eye. But what the team uncovered next would shake even the most seasoned detectives. While searching the attic of the old house, a deputy found a trunk shoved deep into the shadows, covered in dust. At first, it looked like nothing, just another forgotten relic. But when the lid creaked open, the room went silent. Inside were dozens of old photographs, yellowed with age, each one showing a different family but always in the same house. The unsettling part? Every family looked happy in the first few photos, but as the stack went on, faces turned grim, postures rigid, eyes almost hollow. Then came the final photograph in the bundle, a picture of the very family at the center of the current investigation. The discoveries sent chills through the squad. How could photos of the victims, taken recently, end up inside a trunk that looked decades old? Who put them there? Adding to the dread, tucked beneath the photographs was a diary. Its pages were brittle, filled with frantic handwriting that detailed strange occurrences in the home, whispers at night, shadows moving without cause, and warnings not to trust the house itself. Suddenly, the case was no longer confined to the present. Something about this place carried a history that investigators could no longer ignore. Chapter 5: The Chilling Testimony. Every unsolved case has one turning point, a moment when the investigation either stalls or explodes wide open. For this case, that moment came when detectives tracked down a neighbor who claimed to have seen something the night everything went wrong. The woman, elderly and frail, lived just across the street. At first, she hesitated, wringing her hands and insisting she didn't want to get involved. But when pressed, her words spilled out in a trembling voice. She said that, on the night of the disappearance, she woke up to the sound of screaming. Not the kind of scream you hear from children playing, but something primal, guttural. When she peered out her window, she swore she saw a figure standing in the upstairs window of the house, tall, gaunt, and motionless. It wasn't a family member, she insisted. This figure didn't move like a person. Even stranger, she claimed the lights in the house flickered in a pattern, almost as if signaling something. The image of that shadow in the window haunted her ever since, keeping her awake night after night. The detectives wrote it down, but quietly wondered, was this a case of an elderly woman's imagination, or had she truly witnessed the presence of something sinister in the home? Her testimony couldn't be proven, but it couldn't be ignored either. And now, the investigators had more questions than answers. Chapter 6: Evidence that Defies Logic. When investigators finally gathered all the physical evidence, they expected the usual: fingerprints, fibers, maybe a footprint in the mud. Instead, what they found left them scratching their heads. First, there were the footprints. They weren't just unusual, they were impossible. One investigator noted that the prints seemed to appear halfway across the yard, as though the person, or thing, had simply dropped from the sky. Even stranger, the stride length was inconsistent, like someone was dragging one leg or deliberately trying to throw detectives off. Inside the house, dust patterns revealed something even more disturbing. In one room, a heavy dresser had clearly been pushed several feet. But there were no fingerprints, no smudges, nothing to suggest human strength had done it. How could a 200-pound piece of furniture shift without a trace? Then came the fibers. Lab analysis revealed strands of material that didn't match any clothing owned by the family, nor anything sold in local stores. The composition itself was baffling, synthetic, but not quite identifiable. One analyst even admitted, "It's like this fabric doesn't exist yet." Each piece of evidence on its own could be rationalized, but together, they painted a picture that defied logic. The case wasn't just unsolved, it was becoming unexplainable. Detectives began to whisper among themselves. Were they chasing a criminal or something beyond human understanding? Chapter 7: Theories that Send Chills. When logic failed, speculation rushed in to fill the void. And the theories that emerged weren't just unsettling, they were downright chilling. Some investigators clung to the idea of an intruder, maybe a skilled criminal, someone trained to leave almost no trace. But even seasoned detectives admitted, if that's the case, this is one of the most sophisticated break-ins we've ever seen. Still, it didn't explain the bizarre fibers, the impossible footprints, or the silent movement of furniture. Then came the paranormal theories. Locals whispered that the case wasn't about crime at all, but about haunting. They spoke of restless spirits tied to the land, of something that had been disturbed. For some, the evidence fit too neatly into a ghost story to ignore. But perhaps the most unsettling theory was that it involved experimentation. A few conspiracy-minded investigators suggested that what they were looking at was proof of advanced technology, or even government testing. After all, how else do you explain a fabric that scientists couldn't identify? The wildest theory, though, came from a single veteran cop. He said, half joking but not entirely, "What if it wasn't human at all?" Everyone laughed nervously, but no one dismissed it completely. And as each new idea was floated, one truth became clear. The case was no longer just about evidence. It was about fear. Fear of the unknown, and fear that the real explanation might be worse than anyone dared admit. Chapter 8: Witnesses Who Saw Too Much. For weeks, the official report stayed clean and clinical. But outside of those documents, whispers spread like wildfire. Witnesses, neighbors, bystanders, even first responders, began quietly sharing stories that didn't quite fit the official narrative. One neighbor swore she saw strange lights hovering above the area the night before everything happened. At first, she chalked it up to aircraft, until the lights moved in impossible patterns, vanishing without a sound. When she told investigators, they dismissed it as imagination, or maybe nerves. Then there was the young man who claimed he heard screams, high-pitched, not quite human, that echoed in the distance. He said they froze him in place, though he could never pinpoint exactly where they came from. No one could prove his account, but his shaken tone told a story of its own. Even more chilling was the paramedic's confession. He admitted, years later, that when he entered the scene, he felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. Not by a person, but by something. He described the air as charged, like static before a lightning strike. The problem? Most of these witnesses went silent after sharing their stories. Some feared ridicule. Others claimed they were pressured to stop talking. And a few simply disappeared from the public eye altogether. It left a haunting question. Did these witnesses truly see too much? Or were their voices buried to protect a truth far darker than anyone expected? Chapter 9: The Cover-Up Allegations. Every great mystery seems to have one common thread: whispers of a cover-up. This case is no different. From the moment inconsistencies began appearing in official reports, suspicions of hidden truths started to grow. Investigative journalists who dug deeper noticed redactions in files that should have been routine. Pages blacked out. Details conveniently lost. Even timelines didn't always line up. How could witnesses describe events that official logs never mentioned? Either everyone outside the investigation was imagining things, or someone on the inside was carefully editing the narrative. Locals also claimed they saw unmarked government vehicles parked nearby in the days after the incident. Men in dark suits, not police officers, were said to go door to door, advising people to stop asking questions. Most who received visits stayed quiet afterward. Perhaps the most damning clue came from a leaked memo, allegedly written by someone within the investigation. Though never verified, it hinted at containment protocols and a classified interest in the site. Why would such language appear in what should have been a simple missing persons or crime report? For those convinced of a cover-up, the motive was clear: protecting the public from a truth too disturbing to accept, or shielding powerful players who never wanted the light of day exposing their involvement. Either way, The deeper people looked, the harder it became to ignore the possibility that this case wasn't just unsolved, it was being deliberately kept unsolved. Chapter 10: The Paranormal Connection. When traditional explanations fail, people often turn to the unexplainable. That's exactly what happened here. As the case dragged on, whispers of the paranormal began to swirl. Locals spoke of strange lights in the sky on the very night of the incident, glowing orbs that hovered silently before vanishing in a flash. Some even claimed they saw figures moving in the woods, not quite human but not entirely something else either. Were these just frightened imaginations, or fragments of a larger, stranger truth? Investigators, desperate for leads, interviewed longtime residents who recalled similar disappearances decades earlier. Old folklore in the area told of a watcher in the dark, a presence said to guard the land. For some, these weren't just campfire stories. They were warnings. Even seasoned detectives admitted there were moments they couldn't explain. Electronic devices malfunctioned near the site. Radios picked up bursts of static that sounded eerily like voices. Dogs brought in to track scents whined, refused to move forward, and pulled their handlers back. Skeptics rolled their eyes at ghost stories and UFO theories, but for others, the paranormal offered the only explanation left standing. After all, if human suspects didn't add up and evidence kept vanishing, maybe the culprit wasn't human at all. This chilling possibility turned the case from a tragic mystery into something much darker, a haunting no one could easily dismiss. Chapter 11: Psychological Toll on Investigators. Working a case like this doesn't just test skill, it tests sanity. For the investigators assigned, the disappearance became more than a job. It seeped into their dreams, their homes, their very sense of reality. Several detectives admitted they couldn't sleep without replaying every detail in their heads. One officer described waking up at 3 a.m. convinced they had missed something obvious, only to sit for hours staring at case files under dim kitchen lights. Another confessed they couldn't drive past the wooded area without feeling watched. The longer the case dragged on, the heavier the atmosphere grew. Leads went cold. Witnesses contradicted each other. Each failed attempt felt like a personal failure, leaving investigators with gnawing guilt. "We're supposed to bring answers," one reportedly said, "but it feels like the case is laughing at us." Forensic experts felt it too. Some left the job altogether, unwilling to carry the weight of another unsolved case. Others buried themselves deeper, obsessing over details long after shifts ended. Their families noticed the toll: short tempers, vacant stares, late nights that turned into early mornings. Perhaps most haunting of all, several officers swore the case site itself carried a strange energy. Some felt ill when they visited. Others admitted they couldn't shake the sense they were being followed home. Chapter 12: Media Frenzy and Public Fear. The media didn't just report on this case, they devoured it. Headlines screamed across newspapers and TV screens, each one more sensational than the last. Vanished without a trace, the haunting that won't let go, the mystery that terrifies police. Every outlet wanted a piece of the story, and in the process, the line between fact and speculation blurred. Rumors ran wild. Some claimed the missing person was seen in a neighboring town, wandering like a ghost. Others insisted it was the work of a serial predator, or worse, something supernatural. Talk shows invited so-called experts, psychics, and conspiracy theorists to offer theories that ranged from chillingly plausible to outright absurd. But the frenzy wasn't just on screens. It bled into daily life. Residents locked their doors earlier. Parents forbade children from playing outside. Local businesses saw fewer customers, with some even closing entirely after dark. People whispered in grocery stores, exchanged uneasy glances at gas stations, and avoided certain roads altogether. The case became a cultural event, and with that came a twisted fascination. True crime fans dissected every detail, while online forums filled with armchair detectives who swore they could solve the mystery from behind a keyboard. Yet, for those living in the shadow of the disappearance, it wasn't entertainment. It was fear, constant and suffocating. The mystery wasn't confined to the headlines. It was alive in every corner of their town. Chapter 13: Chilling witness accounts. If the official reports were unsettling, the witness testimonies were downright chilling. People who claimed to have seen or heard something that night painted a picture more haunting than any police file could capture. One woman swore she saw a shadowy figure moving along the tree line, unnaturally still one moment and then vanishing the next. Another man, a truck driver, insisted he passed a lone figure walking down the highway, barefoot, staring blankly into the night. He said he almost pulled over, until something about the way the figure turned its head froze him to his core. Neighbors reported hearing screams echoing through the fields, though when police arrived, the night was silent. A farmer miles away claimed his dogs wouldn't stop barking in the direction of the woods, but when he looked, there was nothing there. The eeriest detail? Several people, unconnected and from different parts of town, all described hearing the same thing, a low humming sound, like a faint tune, carrying through the darkness. Some dismissed it as the wind. Others believed it was connected to the missing person. What made these accounts so disturbing wasn't just their content. It was their consistency. Different people, different places, yet eerily similar details. Coincidence? Or fragments of a truth too terrifying to accept? Chapter 14: Theories that Refuse to Die. Whenever a mystery lingers, theories start to multiply. Some fade quickly, dismissed as wild speculation, but others refuse to die. And in this case, the theories became as much a part of the legend as the disappearance itself. The most persistent theory pointed to foul play. Many believed the missing person crossed paths with someone dangerous and that their vanishing was no accident. Whispers of a cover-up, possibly involving people in power, spread like wildfire, fueled by inconsistencies in the investigation. Then there were the supernatural explanations. Some locals insisted the area itself was cursed. Stories of phantom lights, strange noises, and ghostly apparitions had been circulating for decades. Could this disappearance have been the latest in a string of unexplained events tied to the land? Others leaned toward the bizarre but oddly compelling. Alien abduction, secret experiments, even time slips. The idea that someone could simply fall out of our world into another dimension might sound like science fiction, but when reality offers no answers, the unbelievable starts to feel strangely plausible. Despite the lack of hard evidence, these theories endure because they give people a way to make sense of the senseless. Each one is like a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit but still feels too important to throw away. The real question is, are these theories distractions, or are they pointing toward the truth? Chapter 15: Investigators Who Couldn't Let Go. For many investigators, cases blur together over the years. But some mysteries sink their claws in and never let go. This disappearance was one of them. Even long after the official files had been boxed and archived, certain detectives and private investigators simply couldn't walk away. One former detective admitted in an interview that the case kept him up at night. He said every time he thought he'd moved on, he'd stumble across some small reminder, a newspaper clipping, a photo, or even a familiar street corner, and the questions would come flooding back. What did we miss? Who slipped through our fingers? Private investigators were no different. Some spent their own money chasing down leads, interviewing witnesses again, and combing through evidence that others had written off. Friends said it bordered on obsession. For them, it wasn't just about solving a crime, it was about giving the family closure and proving that the truth could still be found. One investigator compared it to trying to finish a puzzle with missing pieces. Every time they thought they were close, the picture shifted. The frustration was overwhelming, but so was the pull of the mystery. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes, even the people tasked with finding answers become just as lost in the unknown as the rest of us. Chapter 16: Families Living in the Shadow of Mystery. For the families left behind, time doesn't heal wounds, it deepens them. Imagine waking up every day with the same questions circling your mind. Where are they? What happened? Why hasn't anyone been able to tell us the truth? That's the reality for families caught in the shadow of an unsolved disappearance. Birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays pass like open wounds. Empty chairs at dinner tables become unbearable symbols of what's missing. Some families hold on to hope, clinging to the possibility that their loved one might still be alive. Others wrestle with the devastating idea that the truth may never surface. For parents, it's a unique kind of torture. Many describe it as being trapped in limbo, unable to fully grieve, but also unable to move forward. Siblings often shoulder the invisible burden too, growing up with a constant reminder that their family's story is forever marked by unanswered questions. Communities sometimes rally around these families, organizing vigils, marches, or awareness campaigns. But when the headlines fade, the loneliness grows heavier. The silence can be as painful as the mystery itself. And yet, through all of it, many families remain the strongest advocates for keeping the case alive. Their determination becomes the engine that drives investigators, journalists, and even strangers to continue searching. Chapter 17. The role of the media in keeping the story alive. When the trail of evidence runs cold, one force often keeps a case alive: the media. Newspapers, television specials, podcasts, and even YouTube channels can breathe new life into mysteries that might otherwise be forgotten. But the media's role is a double-edged sword. On one hand, widespread coverage can generate tips, attract new witnesses, and apply pressure on law enforcement. A single documentary or podcast episode has, in some cases, led directly to breakthroughs years after the fact. The public's eyes and ears often spot details investigators miss. In that sense, media becomes an extension of the search for truth. On the other hand, sensationalized reporting can muddy the waters. Rumors get treated as facts, and narratives are shaped more for drama than accuracy. Families often find themselves caught between gratitude for the attention and frustration over how their loved one's story is told. The entertainment value of crime can overshadow the humanity of the tragedy. Social media has taken this influence to a whole new level. TikTok sleuths, Reddit forums, and viral threads can amplify interest overnight, but they can also spread misinformation just as quickly. Still, when used responsibly, the media plays an undeniable role in ensuring these cases don't fade into silence. Coverage keeps names alive, sparks conversations, and makes sure the world doesn't simply move on. Chapter 18. Investigators who refuse to quit. Every unsolved case has its shadows, but it also has its guardians, the investigators who refuse to give up, even when the world has moved on. These are men and women who spend decades chasing leads, sifting through files, and knocking on doors that most people assume are long closed. For them, it isn't just a job. It's personal. Many describe it as a promise, to the victims, to the families, and even to themselves. They carry photos in their wallets, keep case files on their nightstands, and lose sleep over questions that remain unanswered. To them, cold doesn't mean forgotten. It means waiting. Some of these investigators retire and still volunteer their time, combing through old reports or attending memorial events. Others lobby for new resources, pushing departments to adopt DNA testing, digital reconstruction, or artificial intelligence to analyze old evidence. And every so often, persistence pays off. A decades-old case suddenly cracks because one detective refused to let go, finding a detail everyone else missed. Those victories are rare, but when they come, they prove that determination matters just as much as technology. In a world that demands quick answers, these investigators remind us that justice isn't always swift. Sometimes, it's the slow, relentless pursuit that eventually brings light to the darkest mysteries. Chapter 19. Theories that refuse to die. Every mystery spawns theories. Some fade with time. Others linger like ghosts, impossible to shake off. In this case, a handful of ideas have stuck around for decades, shaping the way both investigators and the public view what really happened. Some theories point to the obvious: a botched robbery, a suspect who slipped away before anyone realized. These are the ones that make sense on paper, the textbook explanations that could close the case if only the evidence lined up. But then there are the darker, stranger theories. Whispers of government involvement, shadowy cover-ups, or even supernatural forces. To outsiders, these ideas sound outrageous. Yet when official answers remain absent, people search for meaning anywhere they can find it. And sometimes, Those wild theories uncover details authorities overlooked. Take a closer look at online forums today, and you'll see entire communities devoted to dissecting every detail, convinced the official narrative misses something critical. They pore over timelines, scrutinize photos, and debate endlessly about motive and opportunity. Of course, not all theories hold water. Many collapse under scrutiny, fueled more by imagination than fact. Still, their persistence says something. People can't stand unanswered questions. A mystery this unsettling doesn't just vanish from memory. It evolves, reshaping itself through the lens of speculation. Chapter 20. Families Haunted by Silence. Behind every cold case file, there are families who never get closure. They're the ones who feel the weight of silence the heaviest. For them, this isn't just another unsolved mystery or a late-night internet rabbit hole. It's an open wound that never fully heals. Imagine birthdays and anniversaries where the empty chair at the table says more than words ever could. For some relatives, the silence from investigators feels like betrayal. Promises of answers fade with time, replaced by endless waiting. They replay old conversations, sift through photographs, and wonder if they missed some clue that could have changed everything. Over the years, some families become their own investigators. They dig through public records, hire private detectives, even push for renewed media coverage. They refuse to let the case slip into obscurity because forgetting feels like abandoning their loved one. And then there are others who step back, not out of apathy, but out of survival. Living in that constant state of grief is exhausting, and for some, the only way forward is to let the silence settle. Still, every family shares one thing in common: the unanswered why. It lingers like a shadow. Until the truth emerges, they're left with fragments, a story without an ending, a mystery that keeps them awake at night. Chapter 21. Investigators Who Can't Let Go. For detectives, most cases eventually get filed away. But every so often, one case latches on and refuses to let go. It becomes personal, gnawing at them in quiet moments, surfacing when they're off duty, even haunting their dreams. Many investigators describe cold cases, like this one, as unfinished business. They'll say, "You don't solve it, it solves you." Even after retirement, some of them keep boxes of notes tucked away at home, convinced they'll spot something everyone else missed. For them, it's not just about justice anymore. It's about redemption, about proving that Chapter 21. Investigators Who Can't Let Go. For detectives, most cases eventually get filed away. But every so often, one case latches on and refuses to let go. It becomes personal, gnawing at them in quiet moments, surfacing when they're off duty, even haunting their dreams. Many investigators describe cold cases like this one as unfinished business. They'll say, "You don't solve it, it solves you." Even after retirement, some of them keep boxes of notes tucked away at home, convinced they'll spot something everyone else missed. For them, it's not just about justice anymore. It's about redemption, about proving that persistence can outlast silence. Some detectives quietly admit that these cases age them. The weight of years without answers presses heavy, and in a job built on finding truth, the absence of resolution feels like failure. Yet others channel that frustration into renewed determination, attending conferences, comparing notes with new generations of officers, hoping fresh eyes will bring fresh insights. And here's the striking part. Sometimes it works. Breakthroughs have come decades later, not through fancy tech, but because an old investigator refused to stop asking questions. These are the moments when silence finally cracks. But until that day comes, these detectives live in the same limbo as the families, suspended between hope and despair, waiting for the puzzle pieces to align. Chapter 22. When Technology Revisits Old Ghosts. Time used to be the enemy of unsolved cases. Evidence degraded, witnesses passed away, memories faded. But today, technology has turned time into something else entirely, a second chance. Think about DNA testing. In the 1980s, the tools were primitive, often producing little more than vague results. Now, with advanced forensics, Even the tiniest sample, a hair root, a drop of dried saliva, can carry the weight of truth. Cases once considered stone cold have been resurrected because technology finally caught up with the evidence. Then there's digital forensics. Investigators now comb through old phone records, security footage, even outdated computer files. What seemed meaningless decades ago can suddenly tell a story when filtered through new software or AI-driven analysis. Entire timelines have been reconstructed from scraps that once gathered dust in file rooms. But here's the haunting part. Every time technology reopens one of these cases, it raises the question, what else is hiding in the evidence boxes of the past? How many ghosts are waiting to be pulled back into the light by tools not yet invented? Technology doesn't just revisit old ghosts, it gives them a voice again. And for both families and investigators, that voice can mean the difference between eternal mystery and long-delayed justice. Chapter 23. The media's role in keeping the case alive. When the trail goes cold, investigators often face an uphill battle. Budgets shrink, leads dry up, and attention moves elsewhere. But the media? The media has the power to keep a case burning in the public imagination long after the sirens fade. True crime documentaries, late-night news specials, podcasts, even viral social media threads, all have resurrected cases once thought forgotten. Sometimes, a single retelling sparks a flood of new tips. A viewer recognizes a face, a listener remembers a detail, a reader connects it. Suddenly, the case fills. Chapter 23. The media's role in keeping the case alive. When the trail goes cold, investigators often face an uphill battle. Budgets shrink, leads dry up, and attention moves elsewhere. But the media? The media has the power to keep a case burning in the public imagination long after the sirens fade. True crime documentaries, late-night news specials, podcasts, even viral social media threads, all have resurrected cases once thought forgotten. Sometimes, a single retelling sparks a flood of new tips. A viewer recognizes a face, a listener remembers a detail, a reader connects a dot. Suddenly, the case file sitting in the archives is pulled out again. Of course, media influence cuts both ways. The spotlight can spread misinformation or sensationalize details, twisting facts into something more cinematic than accurate. But when balanced carefully, storytelling becomes a lifeline, not just for the investigators, but for the victims' families who refuse to let their loved ones' names disappear into silence. Think about it. Would we still talk about some of the world's most chilling mysteries if not for journalists, filmmakers, and podcasters who refuse to let the files close? The media doesn't just report on these stories. It keeps them alive, generation after generation, refusing to let us forget that justice has not yet been served. Chapter 24. Lessons for the future of policing. Every unsolved case is more than a tragedy. It's also a lesson. Behind every unanswered question lies a roadmap of what could be done differently, what could be improved, and what must never be repeated. For modern policing, these haunting mysteries highlight the importance of technology. Decades ago, DNA evidence wasn't even part of the investigative toolbox. Today, it's solving crimes once thought impossible. Cold case units now rely on genetic genealogy, advanced databases, and AI-powered analysis to find links that human eyes might miss. But it's not only about technology. These cases also stress the need for better collaboration. Local police working in silos often left gaps wide enough for criminals to slip through. Now, joint task forces, shared databases, and cross-agency communication are proving that teamwork may be as crucial as forensics. And then there's the human side, training officers in empathy, trauma-informed interviewing, and community engagement. Because sometimes, the answer isn't buried in a lab, but in the memory of a witness who only speaks when they feel heard. Unsolved cases aren't just scars of the past, they're warnings. Each one reminds us that mistakes and oversights can echo for decades, leaving families in limbo and criminals free. The lesson? Every detail matters. Every lead counts. And until justice is served, no file should ever truly be closed. Chapter 25. Why this mystery still matters today. Time has a strange way of softening memories, but not when it comes to the unknown. This case, like so many others that remain unsolved, continues to matter because it's more than just a file in a cabinet. It represents people, families, and communities still searching for truth. Even decades later, the unanswered questions linger. Who was responsible? Could it have been prevented? And most importantly, why has justice still not been served? These aren't just questions about one case. They're reflections of a deeper concern: how society values truth, closure, and accountability. For the families left behind, this isn't history. It's ongoing. Every year without answers is another year of grief, another year of waiting for the phone to ring with news that finally makes sense of the chaos. For investigators, it's a reminder that their work can never stop at good enough. And for us, the public, it's a lesson in empathy to never forget those who vanish into the shadows of mystery. Because when we stop asking, when we stop caring, that's when these stories truly die. This case still matters today not just because of what happened, but because of what it represents. The relentless human need to uncover the truth, no matter how long it takes, and no matter how dark the road may be.